Ahoy there, mateys! Who's ready to pirate some code? What's going on, guys? My name is FiberFlet, and welcome to our Java 2 tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to be going over loops, dupes, and sloops. So before we do that, however, before we talk about loops, dupes, and sloops, I want to talk about Java operations. So this is a important concept of Java. This is basically like the math of Java. This is going to be really important when we do actual programming that's not Karel J Robot programming. I figured it would just be good in each of the episodes if I go over like a basic concept of Java programming that is important that we might not fully use in our Karel examples, but it's just something really good to know like when you do actual real programming. So Java operations are basically like the math of Java. So for int/double, their operations, you're able to add, subtract, divide, and multiply them. Basically because they're like numbers, you're able to do all of those. Think of it literally like you can have an int. Let's say you had an integer that was named 1 and you wanted to have it equal 2 times 5. If you wrote that out in Java by using like the little star right here as your multiply symbol, that would make that integer store the number 10. You're also able to do that with doubles. That's the same thing. It's a decimal number. So with int and double variable types, you're able to add, subtract, divide, and multiply them. For string variables, the only operation you can do with them in Java is addition. That does differ depending on the programming language you're doing. String operations might be different, but in Java, where it's just addition, typically, honestly, like adding and subtracting like strings isn't really done in Java. Like it's not really that useful. You'll see what it does. It basically just like sandwiches the two phrases together. We're gonna have an example on the next slide when we do our practice section, all about that. And of course, the last Java operation is the operation. Basically, you have to go into a house located on 504 West Street Avenue and kill the target. You must make sure that you leave no traces of your visit and then report back to me immediately. So now let's practice. So the first thing is we're gonna have an integer named num, and we want to store 1 plus 1. Go ahead and comment down below what you think the value of num will be. If you commented down below that the value of num would equal 2, you would be correct. You get a gold star. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to have a string named word, and it's going to store the strings of A, B plus B, A. Go ahead and comment down below. And if you got right, you were the dancing queen, because the value of word would be ABBA. So this is fully how string addition works. If you were confused on the last slide when I was trying to explain it, basically it sandwiches the two phrases together. So it would be AB plus BA, and then that would give us ABBA. Perfect. Beautiful. So the next one is an integer named 1 that stores value 4, an integer named 2 that stores value 3, and what will be stored in the integer 3, which is equal to 1 plus 2. If you comment down below that the value of 3 would be 7, you would be correct. This is showing that basically we have an integer named 1 that stores value 4, and we have an integer named 2 that stores value 3, and we're adding the two variables together by using like their actual variable names. That's just basically showing how it's like transferable like that. Now, of course, we have a string called word2, which is going to store the value of bread plus turkey plus bread. Go ahead and comment down below what you think would be stored in word2. If you said the value of word2 would be sandwich, you would be correct. Our last example is going to be an int num that's equal to 9 plus 10. Go ahead and comment down below what you think the value of num would be. If you said the value of num would be 21, you would be correct. So those were basically the bread and butter of Java programming. Like I said in the first episode, a lot of Java is like storing values and doing like math and stuff like that. And that's just the basic Java operations that we're able to do that will be heavily utilized in like more real programming that isn't like Karel J Robot programming. So just keep that in mind. This is very important. Learn, study it. Like literally just rewatch the last 5 minutes of the video like multiple times before you go to bed. Listen to it while you go to bed. Yada, yada, yada. Now we can finally talk about loops, the topic of today's video. Think of a loop like the string toy you might have seen as a kid. If you don't know what this is, it's a pretty useless toy, but it's kind of fun. Basically, you turn on the switch right here, and it makes this like string spin around and around and around. A loop is basically this. Think about it like this. This red dot we have right here, think of that as a command, as a line of code. Think of it as a line of code that makes Karel J Robot move forward. Every single time this red circle would pass through the wheels right here, that would make Karel J Robot move once. That would be considered like a full rotation of the loop. Now let's say we wanted to have multiple lines of code execute multiple times. Let's say there's 2 red circles on this loop. If when each red circle goes through this, it makes Karel J Robot move once. So since it happens twice, since there are 2 red circles on this loop, Karel J Robot will move twice. Now that may sound confusing, but trust me, it really isn't. We're gonna, when we do our programming later on in the episode, it should hopefully be a lot more clear. So now we're gonna talk about the different types of loops. The first type of loop is a while loop, which basically repeats a set of code instructions theoretically an infinite amount of time until a condition is met. We're not really going to use while loops in this episode because while loops mainly use conditional statements, which we're not going to cover in this episode. That's going to be a topic for next episode. So basically keep in mind that while loops are a loop in Java, but for the most part in Karel J Robot programming, we're going to be focusing on the next type of loop, which is a for loop, which basically repeats a set amount of code instructions for a set amount of times. Basically, we can set up a for loop to make Karel J Robot move forward 5 times. The reason why you do this is it makes your code like more readable. Like you won't have to have 5 lines of code that make Karel J Robot move. In the last episode, you saw us use a couple loops in examples. And so hopefully like you have the idea of kind of what loops do. And we're going to, of course, go more in depth in this episode. Next type of loop is a dupe, which is known as a fake loop. It basically sometimes repeats a set amount of code instructions for a set amount of times as a prank. Always. I don't know why they made dupes in Java. It really doesn't make sense. Like they aren't useful at all. Nobody ever uses a dupe. I don't know. You're kind of like stinky if you use a dupe. And of course, the last type of loop is a sloop, which is of course a ship from the hit game Sea of Thieves. So hopefully you guys absorbed all the information well. We're gonna go ahead and start programming now. Get your keyboards out. Let's get ready to Karel, baby. All right, guys, so now we're in our project. Karel's a bitch. I should have known better. And we're going to go ahead and edit our program file from the last episode. For our first example, we're just going to do a simple for loop. For this example to work, we're going to go ahead and load in a new Karel world. So basically a new world in Karel is like basically like the map we are in, that 10 by 10 grid. That's the Karel world. You're able to like make walls on them, set up beepers on them. In this case, we're just going to set a beeper to be about like 8 streets away from Karel. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go ahead and type world.read world. We're going to do the world object, a read world command. We're going to have to pass it a string, which will be our world name. I'm going to add this text file as a download in our description. We're going to go ahead and load the world fiber1.txt. We're first going to have to do in our parentheses and then do our semicolon right there. We're going to delete this code right here just so Karel doesn't move and we're able to see what the world looks like. And we're going to go ahead and compile our program there just like that. And we're going to go ahead and do our void main. And as we can see, we load a world file and we can see we have a beeper right here at 8.2. We're going to basically, the point of this program is we're going to have Karel. He's going to start at 1.2. He's going to move to the beeper, pick it up, and then move over to 10. So the first way we're going to do it is we're going to do it without a for loop. So before we do that programming, we're actually going to have to make Karel start at 1.2. The way we're going to do that is by typing 2 and then 1. And we're going to want him to face east. We're going to go ahead and compile our program and go ahead and run it to make sure Karel's in the right spot. And there we go. So he's at 2.1. He's facing east and he's ready to move towards his beeper. So we know this beeper is at 8 on the grid. So we're going to need Karel to move 7 times. So to do that, we're not going to use a for loop this time. We're just going to do Karel.move. We're going to write out the Karel.move command to make a move. And we're going to go ahead and just copy and paste that 7 times. So as you can see, we have 7 Karel move commands. So now Karel is going to move over 7 times. We want him to pick a beeper, so we're going to do Karel.pick beeper. That's going to make Karel pick up the beeper off the ground. And then we're going to go ahead and have Karel move 1 more time so we can go ahead and see that in action. So go ahead and run the program. And as we can see, Karel should move 7, pick up the beeper, move again. And if everything is programmed properly, go ahead and pick up that beeper, move. And as we can see, Karel has picked up the beeper and it's gone. Congratulations, that worked. But I mean, if we look at this is pretty long. Like, I really don't like reading. I want my code to, of course, be as short as possible. So how are we going to fix that? We're going to go ahead and use a for loop. So I'm going to go ahead and write out some code, and I'm going to explain what it does. So we're going to write out for int I equal to 0. I is less than 7. I plus plus. We're going to go ahead and end of parentheses. Go ahead and create some brackets. And inside of here, we're just going to do Karl.move. So let's go ahead and explain what this does. So we're going to go ahead and create a for loop. The way we do that, of course, is by writing for, and then we have some parentheses. First, in the first part of the for loop, we have to do is define like the variable that's going to be used in the for loop. In this case, we're going to use an integer called I that's going to have a value of 0. Typically in Java programming for loops, you use I and J, but really you can name your variable anything here. The next part is we're going to do I less than 7. This is basically the condition that the loop's going to end in. We want Karl to move 7 times. So basically we're going to set this to 7. The second that I is equal to 7, the program's going to stop. The for loop's going to stop, which means Karl's going to stop moving after 7. And then finally, we're telling the program how much we want I to increment each time. We want to increment by 1 each time. So we just go ahead and type I plus plus. That's just the simplest way. That's a Java programming thing. If you do a variable, then type plus plus, that means you just want to increment by 1. And then finally, inside the brackets, this is where we would put all of the code that we want to have like repeated multiple times in a row. In this case, we just want Karl to move once every like section of the loop. So he'll move once 7 times in a row. We can go ahead and delete these 7 move commands down here. So after this for loop is done, the rest of our program will run, which in this case, we'll have Karl pick a beeper and then move. So we're going to go ahead and compile our program and run it. If everything works out perfectly, Karl should move 7, pick up that beeper, then move again. We'll go ahead and let this program run. And as we can see, that happened. So that's basically the basic use case of a for loop and how we're mainly going to be using them in Karel J Robot programming. Is basically to like condense our code and make it more overall like readable. So for this next example, I want to show how a for loop can have like multiple lines of code in it. So we're gonna go ahead and edit our program. So this number right here, if you don't remember, this is the amount of beepers that Karl has. We're gonna go ahead and set that to 5. So Karl's gonna start with 5 beepers in this scenario. We're gonna go ahead and delete these 2 lines of code. And for this, we're gonna want Karl to move 5 times. And each time we want him to put a beeper, then we want to move. Go ahead and pause the video, see if you can code this yourself. Then I'll show you guys the solution. So the way we're going to want to do this is first we're going to want to change the 7 to 5 because we want Karl to move 5 times. We can go ahead and keep this Karl move command, but before he moves, we want Karl to put a beeper. So we're just going to do Karl.putBeeper. Go ahead and end that call. We're going to compile the program. Alrighty, so now that we have that program compiled, we're going to go ahead and run it. So if everything worked properly, Karl should put beeper, then move. You should put a beeper, then move. You should put a beeper, then move. Put a beeper, then move. Put a beeper, then move. And it should stop, and he's gonna put a beeper and move. 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 Does Karl not know that he only had 5 beepers? Oh my god, guys, Karl is going into beeper debt right now. Oh my god, his house is literally getting foreclosed on. Look at his wife and kid. They're literally crying. Oh my god, Karl's going into beeper debt. What are we gonna do, guys? Okay, so in this scenario, Karl must enter the beeper bank, steal as many beepers as he possibly can, and then leave before the Karl police show up. And for this problem, I want you guys to try to program it. The download for this world should be in my description. Make sure the world is in your project folder, and then you'll be able to load it with the read world command. Go ahead and pause the video right now, try programming it yourself, and I'll get right back to you guys. Alrighty, so I'm gonna go ahead and run my solution. As you can see, Karl enters the bank, picks up 20 beepers, turns left, picks up 10 beepers, turns left, moves up, picks up 50 beepers, then he'll finally turn left again, leave the bank, and go return to his family completely debt-free. So let's go ahead and look at my program. As we can see, there's a lot of code here. So first and foremost, we load in the world by doing bank.txt. Karel Robot's gonna start at free 1 with 0 beepers facing east. So for our first for loop, we have Karl moving 7 times. For our next for loop, we have him picking up beepers 20 times. Then he turns left, moves up twice, picks up 10 beepers, moves up 3 times, picks up 50 beepers, will finally turn left. Move 5, turn left again, and then finally move 7 takes to the bank. Your code should look similar to mine. As long as he does enter the bank and pick up all of the beavers in it, you really could have done it in a multitude of ways. This is just my solution. And as you can see, even with for loops, this program is pretty long. That leads us into what we're going to be doing next episode. We're going to be talking about methods. Using methods, we can make this program a lot shorter. We're going to be talking about that in episode 3. As always, thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you guys did enjoy the video and made it this far, it would mean a lot to me if you did like and subscribe to the channel. I'm really trying my best to make the best content I can, and it's of course easier if I have a lot of people supporting me. Yippee. I'm like appreciative of anything. I'm just like very surprised. Even with the last video I made, it got like 100 views, I think. Like that's just crazy to me. But yeah, anyway, thank you guys again for watching. I hope you guys had fun programming. Next episode, we're going to be talking about conditional statements and methods. Thank you guys for all watching again, and peace out. I'll be in your dreams. Ooh.